Aileen Wuornos, the hooker from hell. From late 1989 through late 1990, the bodies of 7 middle-aged white men were discovered in Central Florida. The assailant had robbed all of the victims before shooting them to death and stealing their cars. Who was Aileen Wuornos? On February 29, 1956, Aileen Lee Carol Wuornos was born in Rochester, Michigan. After she was born, her father was found guilty of child molestation. A few years later, he committed suicide in jail. When Wuornos and her brother were small, their mother abandoned them and left them with her parents, Wuornos' grandparents, and their kids. Childhood friends said that Wuornos' grandmother was an alcoholic and that her grandfather had beaten her. At the age of 11, Wuornos started bartering sexual favors for cash, alcohol, and cigarettes. At the age of 14, she gave birth to her sole child, according to neighbors. The father was a senior friend of Wuornos' grandfather. The kid was given up for adoption. Soon after, she started to spend more time away from home, either camping or hitching throughout the nation, frequently using aliases. After her brother passed away from cancer in the early 1980s, Wuornos relocated to Florida and started working as a prostitute. She constantly found herself in legal difficulties for her prostitution and other misdeeds. By 1991, her record includes arrests for forgery, violence, robbery, illegal possession of a firearm, and other felonies and misdemeanors. She was frequently labeled as unpredictable and quickly irritated by her coworkers and law enforcement officials. Attitude poor was frequently highlighted in her arrest records. At a bar in Daytona Beach, Florida, Wuornos first met Tyree Moore in 1986. Their passionate romance ended soon before Wuornos' last arrest in 1991. Moore was the second lady Wuornos had a romantic involvement with. Her major customers as a prostitute were white, middle-aged, working-class men. Tyree Moore and Wuornos collaborated to pawn off stolen goods in Florida. The items belonged to Richard Mallory, and a receipt with Wuornos' thumbprint was found at a local pawn shop during the murder investigations, according to Volusia County Police. The police then located Wuornos as the location of further stolen goods from Mallory. A key stolen from Wuornos was used to unlock a rental warehouse unit where a camera from Mallory's car was discovered. Under a false name, Wuornos had rented the apartment. Other things from Mallory's automobile were linked by the police to individuals or pawn shops Wuornos had contacted. Tyree Moore had grown wary of Wuornos' operations by 1990, if not completely aware of them. Moore relocated to Pennsylvania to live with her family. Police tracked Moore down and used her to get a confession out of Wuornos when she was detained for a warrant at a biker bar in Harbor Oaks, Florida. The trial. If a defendant is found guilty of murder in Florida and the crime meets certain criteria outlined in the Florida Penal Code, such as the killing of a police officer or firefighter, the killing of 2 or more victims, the commission of a murder for hire, or the purposeful commission of the crime while committing an abduction, burglary, robbery, aggravated rape, or another statutorily defined offense, the defendant may be sentenced to death. Capital murder is the term used to describe the subset of killings that fall under these categories. Wuornos was accused of murdering Richard Mallory in the first-degree armed robbery using a gun or other lethal weapon, and gun possession by a criminal with a prior conviction. According to the prosecution, Wuornos was eligible for the death penalty because the alleged murder occurred during a robbery. Cases where the offender is not eligible for the death penalty, such as murder trials, differ from capital trials in a number of respects. First, potential jurors must be death qualified to serve on a jury in capital cases, questioned about their ability to consider both aggravating and mitigating evidence and to render a death sentence in an appropriate case. Only those jurors may be chosen who are ready to consider putting a person to death. The burden of proof shifts to the government to establish the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt after the jury is selected, and the government must present evidence to support this claim. The filmed confession Aileen Wuornos made to detectives while being questioned served as the fundamental foundation for the prosecution's case. Based on a Florida regulation known as the Williams Rule, which permits evidence linked to collateral crimes to be introduced if it helps to prove purpose, intent, knowledge, modus operandi, or absence of mistake, the prosecution was permitted to present evidence relating to Wuornos' prior murder counts. Wuornos' original assertions that each of the 7 murders was committed in self-defense were refuted by the prosecution by pointing out that Wuornos' account changed with each successive telling. Wuornos admitted to the police that Mallory had picked her up while she was hitchhiking, and that the two of them had then gone into a remote forested location to perform a prostitute act. Then she and Mallory got into a fight. Wuornos claimed she had the impression that Mallory intended to roll her, take her money, and rape her. The two started fighting over the bag as she reached for a bag in which she kept a revolver.
"You son of a bitch. I knew you were going to rape me."
To which Mallory responded,
"No, I wasn't."
At this point, Wuornos fired at least one shot while Mallory was still seated behind the wheel. Mallory reportedly fell to the ground after Wuornos ran around the car to the front and shot him once more. Wuornos shot him twice more while he was still lying there, searched his pockets, covered the body with a piece of carpet, and then sped off in his automobile. Wuornos later claimed that Mallory had sexually assaulted her anally and vaginally while enjoying her screams of pain. When she was finally untied, Mallory instructed her to lie down. She started to fight him because she thought he was going to murder her. Mallory informed her,
"You are no more, bitch. You are gone."
Wuornos then withdrew her gun from her purse after finding it. The two started wrestling for the revolver as Mallory grabbed her hand. Wuornos won the battle and killed Mallory. She warned Mallory again more, but he kept rushing at her, so she shot him twice more. The defense of Wuornos also brought up the problem that Tyria Moore and 3 other detectives working the case spoke to the media shortly after Wuornos was arrested in order to promote their tale. Some people believe that such negotiations led the witnesses to embellish their accounts in order to accept more lucrative offers. After less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found Wuornos guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder and armed robbery. A furious Wuornos yelled. Following the conviction of Aileen Wuornos for the murder of Richard Mallory, a penalty trial was held in front of the same jury to decide whether she should get a death sentence or a life sentence in prison. If there are any statutorily defined aggravating circumstances, facts that make the crime more serious or the defendant more deserving of death, any mitigating circumstances, facts that extenuate the crime or make the defendant less culpable, and whether the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances. The jury will typically decide between death and life imprisonment at this penalty trial. The trial of Aileen Wuornos entered its penalty phase on January 28, 1992. By a decision of 12-0, the jury recommended the death penalty, finding that Wuornos' case had 5 aggravating factors and just 1 mitigating one. The following were the top 5 aggravating factors. 1. Wuornos had previously been convicted of a felony that involved the use or threat of force. 2. A heist was carried out as a murder took place. 3. Murder was committed to escape being apprehended. 4. The murder was abhorrent, horrifying, or cruel. 5. The murder was cold, deliberate, and planned. One mitigating element was identified by the trial jury. Having borderline personality disorder was a problem for Aileen Wuornos. Reporter Michelle Gillen for Dateline NBC found out Mallory had served 10 years in prison for a horrific rape in another state in November 1992. Detectives had previously rejected the existence of any evidence supporting Wuorno's allegations of rape or Mallory's history of sexual offenses. To investigate allegations that Mallory was violent, police would have examined federal criminal records which would have shown up this history. Wuornos was never allowed a retrial because the judge wouldn't allow this to be introduced in post-trial procedures. Following the trial, Wuornos was formally adopted by Prell's new friend Arlene after Prell received instructions to take care of Wuornos in a dream. Prell claims that Jesus instructed her to write to Wuornos, and she did so. Wuornos was unaware that Prell was paid for her interviews, including one with Nick Broomfield, who gave her a $10,000 payment. Wuornos grew to believe that Prell was only there for the attention and the money, hence their relationship did not last. In an interview with Broomfield, Wuornos said that Prell and Glazer were giving her advice on how to commit suicide while she was incarcerated. She believed they suggested the no-contest plea because Glazer had the necessary expertise to handle a case involving several murders. Wuornos admitted to killing Charles Karskaden in June 1992, accepting her sixth death sentence and feeling defeated by the loss of her once trusted friend Prell. She admitted killing Walter Antonio in February 1993 and received a second death sentence. She stuck to her story that Mallory had sexually assaulted her while making her court appearance. The execution. Aileen Wuornos was put to death at Florida State Prison by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. In her final remarks, Wuornos said,
"I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day, with Jesus June 6th. Like the movie, Big Mothership and all, I'll be back."
At 9:47 a.m., she was pronounced dead. Since 1976, 10 women have been put to death in the United States. Aileen Wuornos was the second woman to die in Florida. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the notification bell to subscribe and leave a comment below. Thank you. See you in the next video.